Right, okay, guys, let's get this sorted out. Are we all in? Right. You're going to make a crown in your Dental Technology Techniques unit. To facilitate that, you can't put something over a tooth. It's got to be cut down to allow, A, if there's any decay, to have that removed, but we've got to have the space to put our materials and form a crown onto that tooth. So, die stone model, so a very hard plaster, sectioned so I can take the tooth out that we're working on, and that then went into the scanner in 229. It picked up the image of that, sent it to Germany, to Leipzig. It was milled and back here in 2 days. And what was returned was, it's like a thimble, okay, and that's zirconia oxide. Many labs sell these as metal-free ceramics. Zirconia oxide happens to be a metal oxide, so I wouldn't market it myself like that. But metal in the mouth doesn't look good. When you fire something at 900 degrees C, the metal goes black, it oxidizes. So we have to hide all of that if we use metal ceramics. Distinct advantage of this. Yeah? It's white. And it can be shaded as well. This was a shaded zirconia to A2. Now you guys did shade taking the other week with grain, didn't you? Okay, so you can see here I've got some ceramics, which is a powder, and that's formed by adding all the chemicals together, firing it. It turns out in slabs about the size of this. And they drop when it's absolutely stinkingly hot. They drop it into cold water and it fractures. It's then pounded and ground into a powder. And all we're doing is reshaping the powder and then joining it all back together again in the shape of the tooth.
Frit, isn't it?
It's called a frit, yeah. The slab is known as a frit. And I did go to Ivoclar, as did Simon, 4 years ago now, something like that. And the one thing they wouldn't show us is what they did with the frit. We could just about, in the far distance of this factory, make out the frit. But for some reason, they wouldn't allow us. It was a trade secret or something like that. So the ceramic goes into a ceramic tray. I keep my ceramics all in a row, because you might have a tooth that's got 8 or 9 different colours. Okay, so you need to know where you're putting your ceramics. This isn't water; it's a modified liquid, and it gives the porcelain a bit of strength, so you can actually sculpt with it. It gives it a bit of body.
It's starch, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
sugars and starches.
It's a bit too sticky for me. I still like distilled water.
Yeah, every technician's got a different, likes and dislikes. Some systems you put the liquid into the ceramic, fire it, and it'll crack the ceramic. So you tone it down with distilled water. But it really is different for everyone. And the weird thing about ceramics is you'll all build up in a different way. You'll all have different moisture control rates, and these shrink in the furnace. So you're all going to get different shrinkages as well. And that's, where CAD, frankly, takes over and takes that human side out to manufacture out and makes things far more consistent. So the pink is only a food colouring, and in this case it shows us that it's dentine. What's dentine? Could you describe dentine? Oh, come on. Well, dentine's the colour of the tooth. So when you took your shades the other day, you were working with dentines. And the enamel is obviously the bluish bit on the top of the tooth. And I do build quite a bit of enamel into my teeth. I like translucency in my work. So before you saw this, in its raw form, I can't bond straight onto it. with the ceramics. And bear in mind, you'll notice this is ZR, ZR, ZR. All the ceramic is for zirconia oxide. You can't bond metal ceramics, which happens to be MC, onto this. And when you do your complex unit next year, you'll have terms like coefficients of thermal expansion. They're different. And other ceramics will just peel off this and fracture. So you have to have the right ceramics. But you have to put a liner down first, and that buffers the CTE basically and makes this chemically and mechanically stick to the zirconia. All that is a wash. So this coping now is a little bit bigger than it was. Okay, so what I've got here, I've got a slightly darker dentine, the body of the tooth, and then the tip of the tooth. So just very, very basic. So ideally, you mix this right, it shouldn't come off your brush. I've got a little bit of toilet roll, not used, behind my fingers here, and I'm going to hold it here because we've got moisture in this and it's running. But I'm going to place it on, keep the tissue in, draw the moisture out, and then it's going to hold that as a solid material in place. So that's the idea anyway. Now, your teeth on the occlusion are slightly darker. So I've put a darker porcelain across the top of the tooth. Then I'm going to hide it a little bit with the normal dentine. And I'm going to build a contact with the adjacent teeth. Because all your teeth actually do touch each other, I would hope. Some of you haven't. You've got your braces on at the minute, haven't you? Some don't, but generally they do. Posing model. I'm going to check the bite. This is ICP, it's called intercuspal positioning, and that is simply, they're together. And I'm going to do that first and foremost. But of course, your lower jaw moves, so I will at some point start moving this around so the ceramics do not impinge on the adjacent teeth. If they do, we're going to have to trim it down. And this is soft at the minute. Once it's fired, it will be as hard as glass and really difficult to adjust. And you'll see that in a little bit later on. Now the necks of teeth happen to have dentine very, very close to the surface. So I'm going to put the darker dentine along the neck of the tooth. And it's quite good practice because the tooth's thin there as well. So it'll give it just a little bit more colour. And then we're going to build the... what are the bumps on teeth called? Cusps, great, right. We've got two-way communication now. Great. So cusps. So I'm going to build those. A little bit sticky. So that's one cusp going on. I can hold it in place. And I can start at the very top of the tooth as well. What's the grinding surface called? We're not going to say, oh, it's the grinding surface, are we? It's got a proper name. Occlusion, yes. You're teaching them better than I am then, Simon. Come on, guys, my group, you better start speaking up. Funny shape, this one. So, when you're doing your anatomy classes, this is why you need to pay attention to tooth shapes. I haven't got a tooth in front of me. I know the shape of this before I start. Now, question for you. Be very careful how you actually answer this one. Should I give Tina here a perfectly formed tooth? Why? It won't look natural. Why? Because? Age, yes. We're not being nasty. Your teeth are worn down. And what we're really trying to do is make this disappear in the mouth, make it look natural. A chameleon. Yeah? So if I give that an 18-year-old's occlusion, which it'd love, I know. But if I did, it would look wrong. So this is going to be quite a flat tooth. We're going to put some character into it, but not a lot. And the other thing is, I want this to last 25 years. Okay. Will the ceramics wear, by the way? Will it wear down?
Do you want it to last longer than that?
Will it wear down? No. It was a 50-50 and got it wrong. Now this won't wear down, so it's not going to age. So if it's still stuck in here 25 years later, or 30 or 40, then it's got to be a halfway house really at this point. That's why I don't make cases with with patients who want bleached teeth, because they might be in their 50s, and 25 years time they're going to have bright white teeth at the age of 75. It's totally unnatural. Okay, so fundamentally that's the body of the tooth built, and it looks a bit flat, I would admit. But we've still got to try the bite, and Tina's bite actually, her arch form, is going to really control the shape of this tooth. Okay, so the vast amount of the bulk of the material's on. You won't have one of these in your kit. It is a scalpel. Yeah, that is a surgical blade. You won't know it's cut you. You'll see the blood first. Alright, so you have to be really, really careful with these. But these are great for shaping, so I'm going to do a bit of shaping. Yeah, nasty cuts with these, it's great. Oh, has anyone lost a wax knife incidentally? Where did you lose it? Oh, no, that's not good. I haven't found one here. So I was found somewhere else in the college, and I've had a manager give it to me. Very soft camel hair brush, and it is incredibly soft. To shape ceramics, you can use your fingerprints, and they act like tiny little files. And because of the particle size of the ceramics, you can start shaping and smoothing. And then to get rid of that dust, we can use a really soft brush. It's called a whipping brush. So I like to whip things. Okay. And that's now nice and smooth. Okay. And there, it's not bad, eh? Oh, I love teaching second years to do this, because they say, oh, that looks dead easy, Bob. And then I laugh for the next 6 weeks as they chase ceramics around their models. So now I'm starting just to check this occlusion. Give it a little wiggle. Yeah. And on this particular tooth, there's a slight crossbite. So we've got the lower molar towards the cheek instead of the upper molar. So it's a little bit upside down there, really, back to front, but perfectly natural. Okay, so I'm just tidying up where it's tubed. Right, okay, if I put enamel on top of this, it's going to go huge, so I'm going to have to leave a space for my enamel. So I cut down the contact areas, and these are called the marginal ridges. It's where the highest points where they actually meet together. So I cut that away. I'm going to cut away, because it's Tina, I wouldn't normally do the back, but hey. Just the little tips, the cusps now are going to disappear. So I'm just going to reduce those. And if I cut back and don't dampen the dentine, I'll get a line in the ceramics and it'll look really unnatural. So I'm just going to dampen.
Is that going to go on YouTube?
Yeah. Unedited, of course. So now I'm going to put the enamel on, and this is going to give it the translucent tips to the cusps. And if you ever had icing sugar teeth, it's going to start looking like that. if anything you take from this, I am not putting huge amounts of material on. I'm putting the material where it needs to be, and I'm not, you know, it's not all over these teeth and this kind of stuff. It's where it needs to be. So, how much do you think ceramics cost to buy? Yeah, you're right there. Normal kit with bottles this size, about £900. Okay. So you don't wait. No, not for the bottle, no. Yeah. There's only a few places in the world that will mine ceramics, so there is no black market for ceramics. Okay. Check the bite again. So there's lots of bite checking. Now if I get this stage right now, I'll fire it, it'll shrink slightly, there'll be a little bit of trimming with the hand engines that you've got, the hand pieces, and then I'll glaze it, shape it and glaze it, and then it's ready to go into the mouth. So it doesn't take a huge amount of time to actually make one of these. As I say, when you get going commercially, 5 minutes for one of these, you know, because I'm being watched. And the patience here. I'm going to go a little bit slower. Right, okay, so I've got my enamel on now. Oop, just scoop that bit off. I'll have to add a little bit in there. Just put that cuff back on. Now I'm going to try and build the valleys and the hills of the occlusion. Now these would normally be sort of triangular shaped, but with the natural wear, it'll be a little bit, they'll have the triangle, but they're going to be a little bit flatter on top. So we're going to have to play that game. Put anything in here? It's only got a little lacron. I can borrow a clean one. Little carbon. No, don't worry then, I'll use the scalpel.
Don't rush, guys.
Yeah, I know. It's only being videoed and put on YouTube and it's memory. And so, what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut away the denting inside that I've added on, and you might think, oh, that's a bit of a waste, but I have to get the shape first. And dampen inside, like that. If I think I can see a little bit of the coping beneath, I'll just put a little dentine on to cover that. And you can get a Cluzel ridge porcelain, but I quite like using enamel, so I'm going to go ahead with that. So I'm going to place a ridge in on there, check the bite, and this is the difference, this is where the aging's being done on the tooth. Here's the that's where I check the bite. I'm going to leave it a little bit proud because it is going to shrink, but not by much. I don't want to be cutting this in for hours, that would be a waste of materials and my time. So I'll put another ridge in. There. Check the bite. So there I've got far more of a hill and two valleys than I have on that cusp, and that's quite nice. So that's going to be quite shiny and flat when it comes down to the furnace and aged. A nice big ridge here. Just put that in. Quickly followed by a tiny little one here. Check the bite. Okay, that's good. We've got a nice bite area here as well. It's close. And we put lots of water in. So you can see, if you have a quick look at that, you can see where the opposing teeth bite. Okay. Now if I put the 18-year-old occlusion onto that, it wouldn't fit the mouth. Okay? Right. So, these are what I call primary angles. We have secondary angles that we've got to carve as well, as technicians. And I haven't brought my carver with me, so I'm going to have to adapt that. Right. So we're nearly finished now. The way the teeth contact each other, guys, I've got to make sure that that's a contact, but it's passive. If I don't get the contacts right, if they're too hard, the patient will always consistently feel pain, or it won't fit at all. Or the dentist will have a go at trimming it and ruin the crown. So I have to get that right. It's got to be touching but passive. Now if it's short, it's going to cause food traps. And right where the natural tooth meets the artificial tooth, we're going to get decay. So the contacts are really, really important. And we can see those. This is the side of the tooth, just in there. Let's get that the right way around. And the other thing is, any overextensions have to be removed, because if it's overextended, it has to go in a minute. Right. If it's overextended, that's going to push the gum away. And if that's pushed away, the margin's exposed. A, the patient will feel pain, but the tooth could become loose. Alright. And it would encourage bacteria. So at the very neck again, it's the dark porcelain that we're going to put on. Then a little bit of the body. And I said earlier, you'll all build up with different moisture rates. You get to learn how much your ceramics is going to shrink. And then you know when you put your porcelain on the side, if I add so much, it's going to mean that I've got a certain amount to trim after it's shrunk. But you're going to find this really hard starting off. It's only by experience that you actually get that feel for the material. And different systems, different amounts of moisture loss as well. So it's quite complex, this is. But the main thing is, can you sculpt a tooth? So I do add a little bit of height to the teeth as well in this area, because it's the most unsupported area, so it's going to shrink just that little bit more than ceramics in the body of the tooth. So looks like it's got two little wings on it now. Okay, but that's the area that's going to shrink. And I'm going to smooth this off and make it nice and round and stuff yet. So, once again, I didn't have the tissue there, so by putting the wet porcelain on, it's got moisture in it, so that could move. So it's back onto the tissue, and this is called condensing. So the whipping of the brush, that condenses the porcelain. You can do it with tissue, and there are as well, you can buy these, they're like little hair dryers. So you switch that on, put your crown in front of it, and it dries your ceramics. My favourite is toilet tissue. Okay. So, now that's condensed, I shall use my file of a fingerprint and just gently rub the ceramics, dragging it down to the margin. If you get this right, you should be able to drop this on the floor and it shouldn't break. I'm not going to do that, because we've got the rest of the lesson to go through yet, and I really want to see your SOPs, so we won't drop it. And then I said I've got my secondary angles, well I'm going to carve the primary angles, and you can, ideally, you can make a primary angle carver out of 0.7 ortho wire, and just trim it to a pencil point, sellotape it to a pencil, and then you've made yourself a carver that you can use for wax, you can use for ceramics, and you haven't had to buy that. That's a really cheap way of doing of getting a nice carver. But this is a new scalpel blade, it's very sharp on the end, so I will literally carve some bits and pieces into this. So it's knowing the lines in the tooth. So each cusp is divided by a line from the adjacent cusp. And again, I could put lots of little squiggly lines in and stuff, but I'm going to keep this quite subtle. If you go too deep with this and go onto the coping, it lifts the ceramic off, so you've got to be really careful you don't go too deep. The other thing is, if I go very deep with an occlusion, the patient could have real difficulty cleaning the tooth. So I don't go crazy with the occlusion. Some people, you know, their anatomical skills are amazing. The bottom line is the patient might not be able to keep it clean, and that defeats the object. So I'm just going to dampen down the areas that I've carved. Now all that remains, I'm going to take this off, push the margins down, so the ceramics is really engaged with the correct margin, and then pop it onto a stand and fire it in the furnace. So if you have a quick look at that. So yes, it could, you know, it could have fantastic anatomy on here, or morphology, but it's not going to fit the patient, and it's not going to fit them out. So all the shapes on the top of that tooth have been generated by the opposing tooth. Alright? So you can be highly skilled, very aesthetic in your work, but if it doesn't function, it's not going to fit. And you only get paid if the things fit. Okay? I'm getting red wine for this one.
Definitely.
Helps the making of teeth and grades. Bear in mind, kids. Right. Now, I'm pushing this down onto the margin. If I get any ceramics up inside the tooth and put it into a furnace, it will fuse. It will join to it. And then this won't fit onto there. So we've got to be really super clean now with what we're doing. So I'm just going to run around the inside of the crown, cleaning it up. And that's now ready for firing. Okay. Right, back to the day job then.